Hello, everybody, and welcome to the New Age of Enlightenment. I am your host, Josh the Archon, and today we're actually going to delve into a very big matter that I take close to my heart. But before we do that, let's delve into the name change. But before we also do that, let's go into something completely different. What I would like to do is thank my Patreon supporters, Linear, Mikey Famine, Laura Magee, and TART for helping me and supporting me on Patreon because this is helping me provide the information that is necessary to delve to you, the viewer. So, again, thank you so much for your support, and I appreciate it extremely much. Also, Eric and Linear, thank you so much for showing up. It is greatly appreciated. Happy to see you both. So, today we're actually going to be discussing something, or actually, before that, we're going to be discussing the name change because the name will be changing from the Atheist Enlightenment to the New Age of Enlightenment. So, what's with the name change? Why are we changing the name, or why am I changing the name? I started to realize that if we utilize the atheist umbrella, for instance, in my what outlook, has kind of been tarnished in a sense, sadly, by the way that we've kind of interacted or how certain atheist groups have interacted underneath the atheist umbrella, right? They claim atheism underneath their own specific umbrella or their own terminology, and henceforth it kind of has led to or at least for me, for instance, wanting to change the footing a bit because I'm still obviously advocating for atheism, but I'm advocating towards towards an atheism that I think will be better for the actual entirety of atheists in a sense. Now I know that's a very big claim, but that's how I'm kind of looking at things. So the reason why I'm calling it the New Age of Enlightenment is because back in the 18th, or my apologies, I guess you could say late 18th century, early 19th century, we had what was called an Enlightenment era. And the Enlightenment era truly awakened people towards the sciences. The developments of the world that we see today happened during that period of time, during the Enlightenment. And what I wish to espouse, in a sense, is a new age of enlightenment. So to tackle and take what our forefathers and foremothers had done within the 18th and 19th century, and build upon what they made. And henceforth, that's why I'm calling it the new age of enlightenment. So that's the how could I say it? The full terminology of why or the full reason, the full reason why I'm changing the name from the atheist enlightenment to the new age of enlightenment. I'm still promoting atheistic content, so don't worry about that. I think atheism is as I stated in the last conversation, I think atheism is the only way forward. But I think that because there's so much heat on the word, I think that utilizing the new age of enlightenment actually brings forth something nouveau, brings something that's new to the forefront. So that's what I'm providing. That's just to let everybody know based on those circumstances. The next step or the real reason, and we can actually start now with diving into the actual reason of this show, is my understanding of normalizing atheism. And if there's anybody who's on here that hears, let's just say, or has a different idea of what normalization is, please you ask questions or put forward statements, and I would love to look at and gauge at the way that you're kind of conceptualizing what normalizing means to you. And if it's more on the lines that I like the way how I see it, then I will call that out. But if it's something where it's more on the lines of the way that I see the atheist movement should be going, then I would be more in agreement with you. But anyways, let's get started. So for me, I think that normalizing atheism is futile. It's a futile effort in a sense because we're kind of asking that the theist welcome the atheist into the midst, right? That the atheist can be welcomed like every other person and every other believing person, let's just say, even though I know atheists aren't believing people, but we want to be kind of lumped into the fold. We want to be part of the group in a sense. But the sad thing is, and this is where I'm going to be pushing back on the normalizing atheism front, is that when we really look at what normalization means, or the way that I see normalization, is I see it as a means for somebody or for people to literally, how could I say it, to kind of appease, asking, please accept us for who we are, because we're just like you. We have the same values as you, but we just don't believe in God, or whatever the situation is. And I think that that is a futile effort, because even within the God world understanding, we have different ideologies within the God world that don't tolerate each other and are completely against each other and at odds with each other. And these are people who believe in God, right? They might not believe in the same, I guess you can say, manifestation of what God is, but they still believe in a quote unquote God. But yet they're not tolerant of each other, right? And let alone, if we really delve into it more, we have theists, localized theists, or theists that believe in a localized God. So when we talk about localized God, we're talking about God of the Bible, God of the Torah, God of Islam, for instance, or Buddha, or the Buddhist. Maybe not Buddha, because I know Buddha isn't a God, but yeah, like believing in the Buddha, for instance, or something like that. Those are localized religions. And if there's a God to those localized religions, those are localized gods. Now, when we're looking at the localized God, we're even seeing infighting amongst people who believe in the localized God. So for me, I'm looking at the normalized atheist movement and I'm saying, what is the understanding, right? How are we supposed to appease to individuals that are believing in the same God, in a sense, but are completely opposed to each other? And that's the thing that I ask individuals, is that how do we understand the normalizing atheist group? And to me, I gotta say, I think that normalizing atheism is absolutely futile, because I think that in the end, the theist and the atheist cannot be like, sadly, side by side, in a sense. We're going to constantly be asking and constantly appeasing to the theist, please accept us, when the theist obviously is going to say, you know what, no, I'd rather not accept you because you don't even believe in the God world, right? You don't believe in the God world, and henceforth, how am I supposed to accept you if you yourself aren't believing in the God world? And let alone, I'm believing in the God world, and let's just say the other person, or let's just say a person that's believing in that localized deity, is saying they believe in a God world. There's a problem, because they themselves aren't tolerant of each other. So, how are you supposed to actually have somebody who's outside of the God world being accepted into the majority of people that are within the God world? It doesn't make any sense. And that's why I think we need to actually create something that's different from those that are within the God world itself. So that's my major pushback when it comes to normalizing atheism, because sadly, I think it's a movement that is doomed to failure because it's based on the likelihood of other individuals accepting that atheists should be part of their community. And if atheists already are looked at, and definitely within the United States, but even within other nations, as something that is lower or can't be trusted or anything like that, then the reality is that there can't be any normalization. There must be solidarity within the atheist movement. And then from there, there must be the expansion of the atheist ideology in and of itself in order to truly create change. And the normalizing atheist movement, even though that I do see that there's benefits to it, I think that in the end, it's going to be an effort that is going to sadly fail. And that's why I wanted to create this conversation today in order to actually build up on that, to build up and to say that instead of normalizing, we should find a new way forward in the future. We should find a new way forward in order to promote the atheistic movement in a particular way that would be beneficial for all atheists, in a sense, and those who wish to obviously join us, and those who are secularists that want to be obviously friends of the atheists or fellow travelers, as they're called. We're not opposed to that. And that's the whole entire thing. We are not opposed to theists wanting to stand side by side with us, but the theist also needs to understand as well is that we need to have our own group and the development of our own group and the solidarity within our group. And that's what the new Age of Enlightenment is trying to do. We're trying to create a vanguard for the atheist in order for them to have something that is something to fight for, in a sense. Okay, so now I see that Antangelo is inside the room. So hello, Antangelo, welcome. So let's see what's going on here. I'll see exactly what has been read here. So I'm looking at this statement. Evangelizing atheists and YouTube atheist content creators talk constantly about God because they have nothing to talk about that is worthy to talk about in regards to their own worldview without God. I think that most atheists, because I don't agree with this, but I do understand why you would say that, Tangelo. I think that a lot of atheists have a tendency of of attacking, let's just say, the God belief, right, or the God world, because they have a feeling that once you debunk the God world, then individuals will slowly but surely start to see through reason that the God world isn't real, in a sense, or there's more logic behind the non-God world than there is within the God world, obviously, right? But I think the understanding, right, is that I do believe that that's also kind of futile because we do need to talk about God, right, in a particular way, because I do think that that is part of the underlying issue. But at the same exact time, we ourselves need to create a nouveau culture, for instance, for ourselves in order to actually have some sort of leg to stand on. And also create a sense of sociability, like I stated in the last episode, of how to actually create some sort of foundation for atheists to stand on. So I can see why you state that, even though I don't agree with you on Tangela. I can understand why you would perceive it in that particular way. And if you still have, or if you're still here, or whatever the situation is, please continue to either put more statements out or ask more questions or whatever the situation is. And I will get to you when my spiel is done. So I hope I answered that question or statement. Um, Atheists have no cause. Again, I don't necessarily believe that, or I when we look at a case, I think that atheism has lots of cases. The problem is that the atheist, or certain atheists, there's more atheists that are delving into philosophy, and I think that is needed within the atheist community. And I think we should actually be trying to promote philosophy much more, and science, philosophy, science, and reason, in order to actually create a stronger case for atheism, because atheism, in my opinion, does have a justification for it. And obviously, this is not the episode to elaborate based on that justification. But if you wish to come to next week's show, we can definitely have that conversation, and I would gladly have it. So, that's all. That's all I have to say at this very moment. Is that I think that we have more justification to believe in an atheistic worldview than we have a belief, than we have for a God worldview. Okay, let's see this. What's the atheist ideology? Because I don't think I have one of those. Was this a thing to Ontangelo, or was this to me? Because I might have stated ideology beforehand, and if that question is to me, I would gladly like to elaborate. So if you're still here, Eric, I would, and that question was to me, I would love to elaborate on that. So just let me know, and I'll definitely elaborate on that question. Absolutely, linear. Absolutely. Uh, the speaking about God absolutely gets clicks, and I completely agree with you. And that's why the New Age of Enlightenment is not going to speak about God. But at the same exact time, we understand that the God issue isn't the pinnacle of all issues. It's more of how do we interact with each other? What's the best way in order to engage with each other as atheists and as a movement, and in a particular way that we can actually start to expand on the atheistic front when it comes to individuals who are looking at our side of the fence, but saying that there's really not much of a quote unquote safety blanket or much of a fundamental to stand on. And that's the thing that I'm actually wanting to promote, is to create that fundamental in the first place, so that when we have theists thinking that they no longer want to be theists and they want to taste the waters of atheism, but they feel that there's not much there for them to grasp. I want to try to promote that grasping, so that when they grab hold, they're like, okay, I can definitely join this, and not necessarily, okay, well, I'm going to skip on the atheist cause and look at all these other causes, or not causes, but all these other ideologies that are out there, such as Islam or Christianity or some sort of nouveau Christianity, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's all I'm trying to say. Sorry, Eric, I'm going to get to you right now. Absolutely. So okay, so I did say it. Perfect. What I mean by ideology is that there has to be some sort of underlying fundamental, I think, in order for individuals to stand upon, just like I stated yesterday. But in order to do that, there needs to be, and I know when people hear an ideology, they think of something that is kind of, and no pun on your name, linear, but they think of a linear source, or they think of a linear thought process when they come to ideology. But all people have an ideology. Even atheists have an ideology. That's what a worldview is. is an idea that they create, or not that they created in their mind, but based on the empirical evidences which are out there, based on, if you're delving into philosophy, the philosophical justifications which are out there on atheism. And then you're able to create an ideological thought process, right? Or a concept of an ideology that can then bring people together. And that's mostly what an ideology is the bringing of people together. If we look at, let's just say, secular humanism, for instance, that is an ideology. If we look at communism, for instance, that is an ideology. If we look at, I don't know, new atheists, right? And not new atheists like atheists who have just who deconverted, right, and are now atheists, and that's not what I mean. But I'm talking about the movement of new atheists. That's also an ideology in and of itself. So that's all I mean. I'm just talking about an idea that creates a fundamental that people can feel more secure standing on. And that's what I mean. I hope that I answered your question, by the way, Eric. Let me see. No, you're absolutely right. An atheist isn't particular ideology. You're 100% correct. The atheist in and of itself, right, is a individual who just doesn't believe in God. There's no ideological umbrella above that. And you're correct about that, Eric. But, right, the ideology comes after that. Like, are you a secular humanist? Like I stated beforehand. If you're a secular humanist, you follow certain I wouldn't say rules and guidelines, but you're following certain, um, how could I say it? Oh, well, yeah, rules and guidelines, for instance. There's no ism. Well, yes, yes, linear atheism. But I think what Eric means isn't necessarily like atheism, right? In a sense, I think what Eric means is that when you look at atheism as a whole is just the negation of God, right? But besides that, there's really not that much which is there's not really an ism that's underneath there. But what I'm stating is that I think that Eric, when he says that there's no ism, I think that might be um, a want in a sense, but I don't think that that is the reality of the situation. Because, as I stated, if you're underneath the secular humanist mantra, for instance, well, you are underneath an ism. And if you're underneath a communistic mantra or socialistic mantra, you are underneath an ism. So the only time where you can kind of say, and even then, I don't even think that you can say that you're not in an ism, right? Is when we're really delving into, and my apologies, we're really delving into a particular thought process, right? Which you yourself have created within your mind, an ideology that you created within your mind that you wish to follow, right? But even that, the creation of said ideology has already created an ism to it. As soon as you create an idea and you're following suit within that said linear, I guess you could say, process, right, of an idea, then you're already creating an ism to start with. So I know that a lot of people don't like to hear that, but I think all ideologies are isms. But that doesn't mean that an ideology in and of itself is something that is negative. And that's what I'm also trying to promote within the new age of enlightenment, is that an ism, right, doesn't necessarily need to be attached to a dogma. An ism is only a set understanding of rules and regulations that a person follows underneath certain quote unquote community guidelines, in a sense. That is where an ism truly stands, in a sense. So it's not necessarily anything that's dogmatic. It's just that I'm a part of a group. The group has these certain ideological trends that are underneath, or ideological makeup, in a sense, and I will somewhat follow through on some of these ideas that con- that cons- that construct the atheistic worldview or whatever. Because obviously, atheism is just the small tip of the iceberg compared to the multiple different isms that are underneath it. So that's all I'm trying to say. Let me see this. I don't mean to cause trouble. I'm really interested. No, 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 Eric. I don't think you're causing trouble. I think that I'm loving the questions. I'm 100% loving the questions, and please continue firing those questions. Whatever you have inside, whatever you're thinking of, don't hinder yourself. Release those questions, because I want to tackle those questions as well. I want to see if, because that's the whole entire thing, right? Based on the new age of enlightenment, is seeing if there's somebody who's on the fence or thinking that, oh, okay, well, there's some sort of cult that's being created or whatever. We don't want, or obviously with a new movement, we don't want to have the connotation of, or not dissertation, but the people trying to think that, okay, well, they're just creating a cult, or they're creating this, or they're creating that, like how a lot of, or certain atheists think. Like for us, obviously, we're definitely underneath the atheistic umbrella, and we definitely don't want to create any type of religious or some sort of secular religious type of thought process or anything like that. But the thing is that we're also looking at humanity through an, how could we say it, an uh, evolutionary psychology as well, and we're kind of tackling the issues that we're seeing, that are coming up to us at this very moment, and we're trying to get through these trials and tribulations in order to really promote a cause that is worthy for atheism, and in a sense that brings and relights that fire that atheists once had back in 2008, or even I would say the early 2000s, all the way up to 2015. And that's the thing that I want to re-enlight within the atheist community. But the only way that I think that we can do that is create some sort of idea that can flourish, and an idea that somebody can look at and really think, oh, wow, I would love to stand on that side of the fence. Because not only are they battling God, but at the same exact time, they're already building a foundation for an after God world. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people are scared of. Is not that we don't make sense when we're battling God. It's actually on au contraire. I think that it's that we don't have a foundation that people would like to stand on, or they find that the foundation that we have is finicky in a sense, and that there's really not any sort of stability to the foundation which is there. And that's, as I keep saying, trying to promote is an actual foundation for atheists to stand on and feel more secure. And when other new atheists, and not new atheists like the movement, but actual real new atheists come into the fray, they would be able to easily stand on that foundation and say, you know what, I am 100% able and willing to help this movement grow. And not only that, but be in solidarity with the movement which is there as well. And that's predominantly all we're trying to promote within the new age of enlightenment. But yes, so back to the content of the actual conversation tonight, is that when we look at normalizing, because I can understand why people want to normalize, because they also, I think there's a connotation within atheists, or some sort of longing, because a lot of atheists still have family members who are theists, right? So they don't want to come off as too harsh towards the theists because there might be family members that they truly love and care about that are within the uh, theistic hold at the moment, and they're trying to build, right, some sort of movement, or not movement, but they're trying to normalize atheism in order to have their friends and family kind of see, like, oh, well, atheists aren't really as bad as we once thought, or some sort of thought process along these lines. To me, I think that in the long run, because I think family in general, like for instance, my mother is a theist. I love my mother dearly, with all my heart. But we do run into certain, I guess you can say, debates and stuff like that, and a certain confrontations based on both of our different ideologies. But the thing is that obviously, I think with certain families, and I think it's more liberal theists that will accept a atheist within their family and stuff like that. Where if you're more conservative or more from a conservative background, it's a little more harsher, and there's more of a pushback towards their child or somebody from their family being an atheist, or even along the plethora of other lines of like either somebody being gay or somebody, whatever the situation is. The conservative has a huge leaning against these types of ways of being, in a sense. And obviously, I can see why, at least within the conservative groups, or those who are coming out of those conservative groups, they don't want to be too harsh because they realize that their family unit, the thing that they truly care about, is still theist, and they don't want to be obviously tossed aside for being a non-theist. So on that matter, I do understand why normalizing atheism is how could I say it, is wanted in a sense within the community, because it's kind of like if we can normalize it, then those who are in the closet right now can have a better opportunity of coming out of the closet and being accepted by their family. But I think, sadly, I think the inevitability is that the majority of time, the atheist or anybody else who is within the proverbial closet, right, is not going to have that final acceptance, I think. And I know that's sad to say, but I think that the reality of the situation is that there's just certain ideological pulls from religion that will automatically turn your family against you, and there's not really anything that you can do in order to change that. And the only thing that you can do is create a viable community for those individuals once they do come out of the closet, that they're okay and that they're safe and sound within the new community that will accept them and that will bring them into their fold and accept who they are. And that's the thing that we want to do within the atheist enlightenment. We don't want to give people false hope. We want to give people an actual chance to be secure within their own skin. We want to give people an actual chance to understand that, okay, the likelihood of me being accepted within my family is probably very low, but that doesn't mean that I'm alone. That means that I have people who are out there who will definitely accept me within the new age of enlightenment. And that's what we're really here to do, is accept individuals for who they are and bring them into the fold and bring them into this great enlightenment that we're trying to commence and start. But obviously, there's going to be certain backlashes. I know that there's some atheists within the community that when they're going to hear this, they're going to feel attacked. They're going to feel that I am engaging in some sort of ideological confrontation against them. And I am open to having conversations with them as well. I'm not against having conversations with other atheists, and I would gladly have conversations on their show, or if they want to come on to to the new Age of Enlightenment, they can definitely come on and we can have that discussion. I have no problem with that. But that's the thing, is that I think that there needs to be some sort of pushback against an ideology or against a thought process that isn't going to bear fruit, at least in my opinion. And if it's not going to bear fruit, then we should at least build something that when that movement falls apart, then there's something behind that that can actually give people a new reason to stand for atheism and not just be like, okay, well, now what? Normalizing atheism has failed. So now what do I do? Now where do I go? Now what is the movement that I should lean for or whatever? And the new Age of Enlightenment, we want to make that the movement for those atheists to jump onto. And it would be an honor to have them and everybody else into the new Age of Enlightenment to espouse what I believe is the reality of our true situation and our existence within this universe. That there is no God, that we only have ourselves to actually help out, and that we can only help each other out through solving certain world issues that will be a huge issue in the long run. The only people who can solve these things isn't those who can believe in the God world. The only people who can solve these things are people who are looking at it through logic and reason, science and philosophy, and atheism. We're the only ones who can actually look towards these type of issues and solve them. But we need to start winning people over to our side. And at this very moment, I know where I stand is not in vogue in a sense. It's not something that people really want to look to right now, because they think that maybe I might be too confrontational. Maybe I might be too hostile towards the theist and give atheism a bad name or whatever the situation is. But the reality is that I already see the ending of the railway tracks for the Normalizing Atheism group. And the reality is that I realize that I no longer want to be on that train. I want to try to do something that literally changes and brings something new to the atheistic movement. And that's why I am doing, and that's why I created this channel, in order to promote a new idea, in order to build a foundation for atheism, in order to build something new for the atheistic cause, so that we can all, and even the theists, can look towards what we're doing and at least see that there is something better than just arguing about a God world. That we're actually talking about real life situations, real life things that we do need to tackle, and the social ability within our group. And that is what we wish to espouse. But as I stated, there will be some people who will push back. There will be some people who will be hostile against me. I understand that. And I'm 100% willing to take that hostility, because I think that this is the new way forward. And those who promote a new way will be attacked. And that is the way of life. But the thing is that through proper argumentation, I do believe that we can start winning those individuals who want to promote a normalizing atheism and realize that maybe normalizing atheism isn't the thing that we should be aiming for. Maybe it should be developing the atheistic cause, developing the social ability of our of atheists, and from there really building something that's new. Something that is new, improved, and that is for the benefit of you, the viewer, if you're an atheist. And even if you're a theist, if you look over onto our side, you will see that we are a movement of action rather than a movement of words, rather than the movement of concepts, but nothing that builds from those concepts. We really want to develop our world in a particular way, which is going to be beneficial for all those who are within the atheistic movement and all those who are not within the atheistic movement. Because that's the thing, we are for people. We're not just for a small group of people. However, we do realize that we must unite underneath a solidarity and underneath our own individuals that are within that particular ideology, which is atheism first. Because once we are solidified, then we can really start making world changes. And that is the thing that I'm aiming for. Now, if there is anybody who has any questions or anybody who has any statements that they want to make, please ask away or whatever. If there are theists that are there and they're going to ask, well, what are the justifications for atheism and everything like that? Sadly, I do not have the time at the moment in order to explain those. But I do promise you that if you do want to come onto the channel next week, so because I always go on the weekends and we promote different subjects each weekend. So next weekend we will actually be promoting. Oh, sure. What's good, Eric? Yeah, I don't know if that's like a high five, a goodbye, or a like, hold up, I got a question. Like if you got a question, fire away. If you're saying goodbye, we'll have a great time and thank you for stopping by. And if you're saying give me a high five, then I give you that high five. So the aspect and the prospect that so next week we're going to really be actually discussing the justifications for atheism. And I'm actually going to be tackling it for 2 days. Okay. The first day is going to be a philosophical justification. The second day is going to be a scientific justification for atheism. So if you're interested and if you're a theist and you want to actually come on through, because if you have any questions, if you have any statements or anything like that, I am glad to have these conversations. Is there something that secular humanism is missing that you're looking to accomplish? Yes, I think that there is something that's missing from secular humanism, or a certain thing that is missing from secular humanism. And the one big thing is that I find that secular humanism is, I don't necessarily see action behind secular humanism. I see that there's a lot of groups which are out there and a lot of groups talking about multiple different things. And don't get me wrong, there are charities which are out there. And those charities and those groups that are actually doing charities, kudos on you. I am not somebody who's going to be engaging against you, because I think that you're actually showing that it's not just the words that come out of people's mouths that matter, it's the actions behind the words that truly matter. So if you're a secular movement that is actually having charities and everything like that, good on you. But I don't find that a lot of those atheist movements, sadly, are actually moving and acting within these type of charities and stuff like that. And there needs to be a lot more atheist. And rock. Sorry, Wes. I swear, man. Yeah, I love you, brother. I love you. Atheism is a point of view and a belief. There's no God. Lol, picking a fight, I don't care either way. No, I completely agree with you, Wes. Like but the thing is that I'm not arguing about the atheism part. I'm arguing about the parts that are beneath that, right? Because atheism is only the tip of the iceberg. We then need to actually look at all the ideologies behind that iceberg, or beneath the water of the iceberg, and we slowly start to see that those particular ideologies might not have what is the word I'm looking for, a proper justification for why that they're atheist or whatever the situation may be. And I think that's why atheists in general, right, when they come into confrontation with certain theists, they don't necessarily have um, they don't necessarily have the argumentation behind them in order to do it, right? And that's the thing that I wish to promote is that said argumentation. I wish to create the justification of why atheism is correct philosophically and also scientifically. So that's the reality that I wish to aim for, rather than, and let alone not just those two, but also the social ability of atheists as well. 1 second. And atheists are rocks. Love it. Love it, Wes. I like skepticism. I'm like, skepticism is good, don't get me wrong. But I think that when we look at the world, because this is the one thing that I'm not a big fan of, is that I see that certain atheists, certain, remember, I'm already utilizing certain, I'm not saying all, but certain atheists say, well, why do we want to change people for who they are? What is the purpose of changing people? And then somebody like, I don't know, Donald Trump or some sort of rightist Christian does something, and that place ends up doing something that people thought can never be done within the modern age. And they're like, oh my God, how did this happen? How did Donald Trump get into office? And da 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 da. And it's like, well, if you didn't, if you're not trying to change minds, then why are you complaining? You should be content with the outcome of what has happened, because you're not within the realm of changing minds, you're just within the realm of letting people be who they are. And there's some people who be who they are that that are going to do some crazy stuff within the nation if they get into power, right? So what is the circumstance? What should we do? We should try to change the minds of people, not just say, well, I don't know. I mean, people should be how they are, and if they're not hurting anybody, well, it's okay. And you're seeing the conservative of somebody rising, and you're seeing people who are conservative piling in and putting their votes into this person to get into power. Well, now this is where I think that this certain atheistic causes end up being problematic, because you're not in the realm of changing minds. You're only within the realm of, okay, well, I'm an atheist and there's going to be other atheists, but people have a right to believe in what they believe. And right there, you run into a problem, right? Because if the Christian has a right, and if the conservative Christian has a right to believe in what they have to believe, right, we shouldn't actually be arguing with them because they have a right to their belief. And yet, no matter how regressive that belief is, they have a right to that said belief. The only time where you can have the justification in order to battle that said Christian is if you're willing to change minds. If you're willing to change minds, then you have a right to complain, because you're like, God damn, I thought that the world, our modern world, would never revert back to something like this. And this is what I'm fighting against, so that the future can become more progressive, right? So that's the atheism that I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for the atheism that changes minds, not the atheism that just sits back and says, it be what it be, right? Okay. 1 second. Bow, 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 bow. 1 second. With it goes the question, and yes, looking for justification for any belief. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think that that's the thing. Any belief should look for the justification and the reason behind why those individuals believe in it. I completely agree with you. But I think that a lot of people don't do that, right? Within both camps, the theist and the atheist. And I'm trying to promote, with at least within the atheist camp, that we should be looking for justification of why we don't believe in a God. But not only that, but what are we bringing to the table, right? What are atheists bringing to the table to in the advent, right, of a non-God world in the future? What are we bringing to the table? And we need to think of that. What are the things that we're trying to bring and promote and bring to the table in order to change the to change the dynamics so that the next generation can be okay and that our generation can be okay too, right? So that is the reality of the situation, why I'm creating the new Age of Enlightenment. Let's go. Okay, cool, 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 cool. That's not to me. Let's go down. Thank you, Linear, very much. I do appreciate that. Okay. I don't think that part of my skepticism allowing nonsense. It's questioning minds and going with strongest evidence. Skeptical may not encompass all of that, of course. No, I completely agree with you, Wes. And I'm not saying that I disagree with anybody who's a skeptic, right? Well, the only thing that I'm trying to say, because the first part of your statement, or I mean your full statement, I agree with, because skepticism is not about allowing nonsense. Skepticism, in a sense, is trying to divulge and look through the information, get rid of the nonsense, and come to some sort of truth or some sort of quote unquote truth value. So I completely agree with you, Wes, 100%. But the thing is that we got to also understand that there's not individuals within both camps that aren't looking in that particular way, right? For them, they're kind of within the nonsense, and they're trying to utilize the nonsense in order to promote to promote their idea or their understanding, and that's the thing that is taking hold at this very moment. And that's what I'm, as I stated, fighting against on both fronts, is that we don't want to have ideologies which are problematic or anything like that that can be how can I say it, uh, that are false. And I know it's difficult to understand which ideology is false and which ideology is true in a sense, or which ideology is more justified than another. But that's why we have the Bayesian theory in order to really look and sh- uh, what's the shuffle through the nonsense and really look in a Bayesian way of what has more of a justification of being the reality rather than what doesn't have the justification at all, right? And that's why I love Bayes' theory. And I mean, let alone I'm still reading up on it. But I think that we should definitely be Bayesian when we're trying to look for uh, something that is either nonsense or to battle against things that are nonsense, in a sense. If that makes any sense. Oh man. Okay. You there you go. You want acceptance, but you don't want to accept their crazy world. So try to change it. You're absolutely right, Linear. You're absolutely right. If you're if you want acceptance, but you're not willing to accept an individual who has crazy ideas, but you want to accept all people's ideas, there's a problem there. And that's why I'm trying to say we must be solidified within the idea that we have in order to confront individuals that do have these crazy worldviews so that they do not get into any real power. There's a difference between somebody who has crazy ideas, right? But they're unable to get into power, and somebody who has crazy ideas is able to get into power because there's so many other individuals that believe in almost the same exact crazy ideas that that person believes in, right? So we got to be smart. We got to be smart as atheists in order to tackle these type of problems and these type of issues. So I completely agree with you, Linear. Wow, let's go down. I don't think that's part of skepticism, though. I agree with it being wrong sometimes. You can't accept. Oh. No, absolutely, but I think it goes a little deeper than that, Wes. I think the reality is that when you have individuals that believe in nonsense, and there's too many other individuals that are believing in nonsense, and there's no pushback to the nonsense that is being stated, right? And let alone, right, is it just the pushback alone indicates that you're willing to change minds or solidify minds into not believing in the nonsense in the first place, right? And if you're able to change the person's mind, or maybe not even the person, but the other people who are listening to the conversation, you're able to change their mind so that they don't go into the nonsense. That is much better. And we can actually provide for a better world in that way. So that's why I think even if you're promoting something that is against a counter narrative to the nonsensical narrative, then already we're kind of in the same worldview at that. We don't want individuals that have whacked out ideas to have some sort of influence on society. Agreed. What's next? Secular humanism, humanism is part of it, and other philosophical inquiry, etc. The thing is that I don't think that secular humanism is part of it, because I think that secular humanism, sadly, is more of an appeasement route in a sense, rather than the reality that we have a confrontation to battle out, right? That we have a conflict to win. And I know a lot of people, when they hear conflict, they think, "Oh my God, this is going too crazy. This is going too much right now." But the reality is that there is a conflict to win. There is an ideological conflict to win, and we need to start thinking about how we can win that. And we need to start thinking about how we can win people onto the side of atheism, because the more atheists that we have, the more that we can actually start to construct proper change. And there needs to be a movement that atheists can stand behind in order to create that change. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay, I think I get you and agreed. Blitzkrieg anyway. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make that noise. But yes, it's time for the Blitzkrieg. But yeah, I do think that the narrative that one must confront bad ideas no matter where the bad ideas are is the best way of doing it. I think that if we do not confront bad ideas, we're actually not fulfilling our right as citizens, right? Because our number one thing as a citizen is to look at bad ideas, look at what the statement is, critique the statement, and try to educate individuals onto not believing in that said statement, right? And if we're not doing that, and we're saying that it's okay for people to believe in whatever they believe in, and then all of a sudden they're starting to win other people over to their weird ideology, we failed as citizens in order to protect those citizens from the trap, which is lying in wait within some of these groups, or within these people, within these people who are promoting these type of horrible ideas to begin with. So that's just my opinion. So that's why, for me, I think the best way to move forward is, as I stated, build up on ourselves and solidify ourselves, but also quick attack on ideologically quick attack on the on crazy ideas. And sadly, or not sadly, but the reality is that theism is also a crazy idea that should be battled. So that's where I stand at the moment. Yes, thunder. I guess I don't think of it that way. Humans need something to fall back on for some stability. Give them some rational stability to fall back on, or we'll lose everything. But Wes, that's the whole entire point, right? Is that at this very moment, At least the way that I'm seeing things is that there isn't really a said rational stability that we have within the atheistic movement at this very moment, because already we're within the realm of appeasement, right? People can believe whatever they want to believe, and I'm not going to try to change their mind because it's futile to change people's minds. Just that idea in itself already leads to a loss, because sometimes it's not even the person that you're having the conversation with, which is that's going to be changed, but it's the people who are listening to the conversation who are going to be changed. There can be certain people who are on the fence listening into the conversation and saying, god dang, this guy has actually got onto something, or whatever. Just like how I constantly stated beforehand, when we look at the when we look at the atheist movement back in 2008, we can even say the early 2000s for that matter. 2008 is the early 2000s, I know, but I mean earlier than that. And what we can really look and what we can really see is that from the early 2000s all the way to 2015, the atheist numbers have skyrocketed like no tomorrow and everything like that. Now we're starting to see or at least for me, a a trend which I'm not necessarily a big fan of, which is we're starting to see people who are appeasing to the theist and are less confrontational with the theist, and let alone we're starting to see those who were once atheists revert back to the theism that they came with, are starting to not activate, but starting to utilize some sort of, I don't know, um, spiritual usage of things. Well, I'm an atheist, but I'm spiritual, or whatever the hell the situation is. And to me, right there, that is a loss. I don't think that that's a win for us. If there's somebody utilizing spiritual using, or I utilize tarot cards to organize my day, or whatever the fuck the situation is, we've lost. Because that's the thing. If we don't even have a proper ground to stand on, and we need some sort of spiritualism in order to actually make ourselves more fulfilled, then atheism, or and not even atheism, secular humanism isn't even enough. Rationalism isn't enough, because we need to add some sort of irrationale to our rationalism in order to feel okay with our day. That's a loss, in my opinion. Secular humanism isn't about appeasement. It's about human rights. Nowhere in the definition it appease the theist. Well, right there, right? Like if we look at secular humanism, I do see it as appeasement, because the number one thing is that when we're looking at ideologies, we're saying that ideologies are human rights, right? So in a sense, we're looking at tolerance. Well, there's going to be individuals that are not going to tolerate you being an atheist. And then when we start seeing that these rightists start gaining power, even the leftists, for instance, start gaining power, and people are like, what's going on here? Why are the communists rising in number, or why are the far right rising in number? We slowly but surely start to realize that we've lost the narrative, because we are in a realm of appeasement. We are in a realm of tolerance. And sometimes, in certain instances, tolerance, when it comes to ideas, isn't a good idea. So that's why I see that secular humanism is appeasement, because we're stating that it's okay for somebody with whacked out ideas to have those whacked out ideas. And then when they come into power, we start saying, well, how did these people come into power in the first place? Because we didn't confront those individuals with the whacked out ideas. Because we were so into the toleration that we didn't stand up for what we truly believed. And that's the reality of the situation. And that's why secular humanism is appeasement. All right, brother. It was fun having that conversation with you. Uh it's understandable. Oh, drank tequila sunrise. Lucky man. Oh, That's my favorite drink. Well, not tequila sunrise, but tequila in itself. Just tequila is my favorite drink. To chill out, well, just want to say F the Nazi National Conservatives. No, it sounds like a plan, Wes. Sounds like a plan. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to confront you, Wes. I'm not trying to battle it out with you. I'm not trying to have a debate with you. All I'm just stating is my ideas based on what needs to change with the atheistic movement. And that's predominantly it. I know sometimes that can be how could I say it? It can be something that is confrontational. Some people might be like, whoa, well, this is an attack on my own beliefs. Like, I got to defend them or whatever the situation is. But for real, it's not any attack on you or anything like that. It is just a statement that these are the things that I see that need changing. So, for the atheistic movement, in order for us to continue with the steam that we have now, right? And to continue moving forward with growing our numbers, growing atheistic numbers, solidifying our ranks, and continue moving forward in order to have a proper defense and justification for being atheists in the first place. These are things that will build up our solidarity and build up the defense of atheists worldwide. But it's got to start somewhere, and it's got to start with a movement. And that's why it's going to start with the I just forgot the damn the new age of enlightenment. That's where it starts. Absolutely. You're 100% correct, Wes. That is one place that definitely needs to be built up on. Is what I would say, because a lot of people like to say secular education, but I push it a bit further. I say atheistic education. Because I think even with secularists, if you still believe in a God world, in a sense, you're still enwrapped with an illogical concept. So the only way for you to separate yourself from the illogical concept is to actually be an atheist and not be an atheist spiritualist, because that just doesn't make any goddamn sense in my opinion. But that's just me. But no, you're 100% correct. It's based on education. But at the same exact time, is based on those who have education, right, or have a set education to educate others as well. That's the only way how we can really start changing things. Because even within the school system, you have confronting ideologies and everything like that, and some ideologies went out than others. But the reality is that if you have individuals that are willing to go out, just like Daniel Dennett, just like Christopher Hitchens, just like I know at the moment there's huge controversy with the two people that I'm going to name, Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins. But still, we got to look at the accomplishments that they did make within the atheistic movement and see that they seriously helped out grow our numbers and our ranks. And we got to start thinking in that same way again, but we need to bring philosophy into it and not just science. So we got to tackle the question of what makes atheism justifiable through philosophy and science, and through reason, and also through logic. Because I think atheism is the most logical way forward, at least. Would be nice to have an atheistic private schools for once. Yes, I always see religious ones, and parents think private schools are better most of the time and throw their kids into nonsense. You are 100% linear. You are 100% correct. And I think that we do need to start creating as you stated, atheistic schools. And I know people would be a little bit like, what the fuck what does that even mean? But it actually means that we want to have schools that promote atheism. We want schools that promote philosophical justifications, scientific justifications, and let alone that build up on the sciences that we do have and build up with the philosophies that we do have, and all else in the matters of education that we do have, and literally focus predominantly on modernization, and not just modernization, but scientific development and the scientific endeavor. That's the way how I look at it, at least. Yes, that's right. That's right. So that's literally what I think is the best way to promote this, is through promoting atheism in a way that gives us the justification that is needed and can actually defend ourselves philosophically, I mean, and even scientifically against atheists that might try to counter that through whatever philosophical argument or scientific argument they think they may have. And that's where the new age of enlightenment is also going to be developing as well, are these types of ways to truly develop our right. Is there something on my lip? No. I don't know. Oh, you talking about this. I'm trying to grow this out. This is not working. This is not working, Wes. But all in all, I want to thank everybody who came on to the show tonight. It was great speaking to you all. You are fantastic. It's the top of the hour, so I do need to shut down the show. But I do want to thank you all for joining in with me. I do want to, again, thank our Patreons for their support. Linear, Mikey Famine, TART, and Laura Magee, thank you so much for supporting the the new age of enlightenment. And stay tuned for next week, because at the same time, 10 p.m., we are actually going to be developing, or we're actually going to be bringing forth philosophical justifications for atheism for next week. So please stay tuned. It's going to be a great show. And the day after, on Sunday, we're going to be building up the scientific justifications for atheism. So again, thank you so much for coming in. It is greatly appreciated. You all have a great night. Much love, and have a great week. See you next week on the new age of enlightenment.